Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me this afternoon, coming from a very rainy, grey pool in Dorset. What a day, what a difference a day makes. Yesterday was, I think, probably the hottest day of the year. It was like 26 degrees here, absolutely baking. Swimming in the sea in the morning, which I did again this morning, and it was very different, swimming in the rain. So, how have you all started your day? Let me know. Good to see. We literally got the whole of the country covered by the look of it here. We have got. Let's have a look. Lorraine from Callendar in Scotland. Catherine from Inverness, also in Scotland. Jordan from West London. Farah from London. Justin from Oxford. Georgina from Yorkshire. H.M. from Milton Keynes. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, my friends. Dale is joining us as well. Hello, Dale. I know you've jumped on a few of these webinars thus far. Awesome, Dale, Leamington Spa. Thanks very much indeed. So, just gone live, everybody. I'm Alex Chisnall, and I'm bringing you today's free webinar from the Festival of Enterprise. Amplify your brand with podcasting. If you've had the chance, I've posted up a couple of polls here. If you click that button and just spend 5 seconds letting me know, put your votes in. So what are you most interested in about podcasting? So I can kind of tailor my content to the right audience. And likewise, how would you best describe yourself? So how would you best describe yourself? Are you a business owner, a marketing professional, or an entrepreneur, or otherwise? And what are you most interested in about when it comes to podcasting? So how to become a thought leader in your space, how to sell your products and services, attract a new audience, or something else. Let me know. If you could take the time to do that, I massively appreciate that. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Georgina. Fully interactive audience already. I love it. Farah says she started her day recording episode 5 for her podcast, Mission Makers. I'll give it a shout out. There you go, Farah. And it's a deep dive into sponsorship insights from a sponsorship consultant in Formula One. That is super interesting. Most people, when it comes to podcasting, or should I say the majority of people, when it comes to thinking about monetizing your podcast, automatically think about sponsorship as well. And I'm going to show you and that, you know, there are opportunities to do that. I've done that in the past with my own show. I don't now. My show, Screw It, Just Do It, is free. But I have had it sponsored in the past with the likes of Barclays and Hayes, the recruitment specialist as well. So you certainly can go down that route. That sounds like a really interesting podcast. So I'll be sure to check it out. Kathy says she's a business owner, but a beginner with podcasts. You're welcome. Barry says thank you. And a couple of messages earlier. I'm just going to see. Georgina says, I'm totally new to podcasting and want to build my brand through podcasting. And 100%, you can do that. I've done that myself. Started my podcast 3 years ago. And the presentation I'm going to talk you through today will highlight that as well. And more than that, illustrate how you can do that yourselves. Because I do believe opportunity has never been greater, far greater than when I started 3 years ago. And obviously, I've learned quite a few things along the way that I didn't know back then. Dale says, I've seen some of your recent podcasts, but I'm new to the idea of it. It's great what lockdown opens you up to. I'm interested to find out how I can use podcasting to promote my new app. Absolutely, you know, podcasting can be used for so many different things, you know, both from, for me, it's got to be part of your marketing mix. You know, if your audience is listening to podcasts and you are not marketing to your audience through audio, then you're clearly missing a trick. Okay, so just checking in with everybody else jumping in now. So everybody's had the notification to join us. Thank you, everybody. H wants to start his own podcast series as well. Well, this will show you how to do it. I did pop up a link to my free Facebook group. Literally started it at the beginning of lockdown. It's called Podpreneur, Podpreneur, podcasting for entrepreneurs, Podpreneur. Please come and join us over there. We literally started 6 weeks ago. just for something to do, to be honest with you, at the time, to fill the days once we were all locked down. And I just wanted to put it out there really and see what we could do with it. So I haven't been as engaged over the last week because I have been super busy. But meanwhile, which is exactly what I wanted to happen, people have been talking to each other within the group. People have been launching podcasts. Thank you, Dale. Well done. And we've literally had something like, I need to do a head count, but at least a dozen podcasts have been launched within that group, literally from scratch. People who maybe needed a little nudge before, a little bit of an incentive, and probably more than that, you know, support and accountability from people going through the same process themselves. So thank you for joining us, Paul, as well. So do check out that link, click it, just scroll back up the chat function. Those of you who haven't been on one of these webinars before, a chat function that you've got on the right-hand side might be different if you're on mobile. I can't remember. I think there's a separate button to access the chat. Just post up any questions that you've got down below. Again, use this opportunity to network. I was meant to be, you know, hosting a bunch of webinars back at our live event at Olympia in April, which didn't happen for obvious reasons, and there was going to be so many networking opportunities. So please, you know, use this opportunity. Post up your LinkedIn profile as well, maybe, or the URL of your website if that's what you do. I'm more than happy for people to do that. I've already posted up my LinkedIn profile, and again, you know, please connect with me on there. Just give me a little while to get back in touch. It's been pretty busy since I've been hosting. Got to be a Guinness World Record. I'm going to find out what is the Guinness World Record for hosting webinars, because I think this is something like number 110 that we've put on here at the Festival of Enterprise, of which I'm content director. And yeah, I reckon it's got to be some kind of record. It sounds to me like a crazy number of webinars to have done. So if you haven't been on here before, that is a bit of housekeeping for you. So post up any questions you've got into the chat. If you're just joining us now, go on over to the polls that I've set up there just so I can tailor this content to you. Just to let you know how these are looking at the moment. What are you most interested in about podcasting? 38.9% is how to sell your products and services. 33.3% is how to become a thought leader in your space. And 27.8% is to attract a new audience. And speaking of audiences, today, 55.6% of you would describe yourself as a business owner, 27.8% as an entrepreneur, and 16.7% as a marketing professional. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So Keith has a sports-related educational website and would like to know how best to use podcasts to promote to the website. Absolutely, Keith. Be covering that here. And again, if you'd like to connect online after this webinar, then just connect with me on LinkedIn or go to my website, which I'll post up later, which is called Podpreneur. Soft launched it last week, haven't announced it to the world yet, tweaking a few bits, but podpreneur.co.uk is the website. Kathy, I'm the author of the upcoming book, On the Edge, How to Stress Less in Today's Crazy World. It's all about mental health, and that's what I want the podcast to be about. Getting tongue-tied there. Yeah, perfect. And I've spoken to a number of people who want to launch a podcast off the back of launching a book as well, and 100% that could be done. Conversely, I'd like to do the opposite. I'd like to launch a book off the back of my podcast, like Tim Ferriss did when he did his Tribe of Mentors book and podcast. Georgina, yeah, that sounds great, Kathy, something I would listen to. Awesome. Great that you're all talking to each other on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my slides and talk you through that, everybody. I'm assuming you can all hear me loud and clear because you've been posting up in response. So just let me know if I focus my screen on the slides. The only thing I don't like about this platform is when you are the speaker hosting your slides, you can't see anything else on the screen except the slides, which is not great from a speaker's point of view. So I'm going to have both windows open so I can see your chat as well. So just let me know, can you see those slides as well as I can see them? And you can probably see my little P head down the bottom of the screen as well, as it has been described before. Awesome. Justin's joined us as well. Justin Shardlow, Vicky's joined us. Adrian, thank you very much. Adrian, Farah, thank you as well. Brilliant, guys. Kathy, thank you. Vicky, hello. How do you recommend to go about getting guests on a podcast, particularly if it's new? And any top tips for recording a podcast from home? Yeah, 100%. And I will cover some of that during this. Again, happy to answer any questions offline after this as well. Vicky, if you've got the link to the Podpreneur group on Facebook, dive into that as well. So every week I basically do a live training with somebody who's already launched a podcast, and then I do like a Q&A, I call it AAA, Ask Alex Anything, when it comes to podcasting. Because yeah, I can help you with both of those things, how to go about getting guests on the podcast, especially if it's new, which, you know, by its very nature, you might think that is more challenging. But I'll show you that you can get guests on your show no matter how new your podcast is. And top tips for recording a podcast from home. Yeah, absolutely. I can cover that for you as well, because at the moment, as you probably gathered during lockdown, technology is a great leveler. You know, everybody's using Zoom to record their content, to record their podcasts, their blogs, etc. Whereas before, you know, for example, myself and my podcast agency, we were booking guests into studios in Soho, in London. We were traveling out to meet people. For example, making a podcast for a zoo. Would you believe it? It's amazing the clients that you get through podcasting, and I love it. And that's taking mobile equipment with me. And that's not happening at the moment. You know, it's a great leveler. So I can give you some tips on how to record from home, because there are ways you can vastly improve the audio quality of a Zoom call, for example. And it's what we're advising our clients on throughout lockdown, how they can get both themselves as the host and their guests as well, how they can improve that. So keep the questions coming. I will check back in with you throughout the presentation. And I will let you know. So Georgina, yeah, before I jump in, I'll just go. Georgina's now live streaming on YouTube, and I'm looking to turn them into podcasts. I have a vocal coach, YouTube and vocal coaching business. I also have online courses. Awesome. And yeah, likewise, I launched an online course last year, which was an absolute ball ache, I have to say, to do. But now I'm so glad I did it, especially during lockdown. You know, trying to get more of your business online has been an absolute godsend. Hello, yeah, lots of laughs. Yours was too. I know, but it's such a great thing to get it out there, and it's, you know, evergreen, as I say, as I'm sure you realise, Georgina, as well. That once you put it out there, it's there for life, and people can access it. And very much like podcasting, you know, it's your legacy, it's your library of content that will always be there till the end of time, and you can, you know, continually add to it and update it. Which I do with my course as well, and tweak it as you go. And yeah, so a number of my clients that I work with started with YouTube channels, with like vlogs, and we turned those into podcasts very easily. More often than not, the audio quality is good enough, but, you know, we've been able, you know, with my producer, to improve the audio quality. We rip the audio out from YouTube, and then we're able to improve that quality by putting it through our software and turning that into a fully branded podcast. So keep your questions coming, folks, and I will stay on at the end for anybody who wants to stay on and answer any questions. But in the meantime, I'm going to, you know, help you today amplify your brand with podcasting. So that's me, Podpreneur Alex Chisnall. As I say, new website which has been soft launched is podpreneur.co.uk. Name of the Facebook group is also Podpreneur. So I'm pretty easy to find. So who can tell me, quick bit of engagement, who is this chap here? Who can tell me the name of this chap here? You might also recognize the branding behind him. Does anybody know this story? Jordan, boom, straight in there. Joe Rogan. Saint Joe is in there. Saint is in there with Joe as well. Yeah, absolutely. So spot on. So for those of you who may not know, so Joe Rogan is the chap here, and reason behind the story is that he signed an exclusive deal with Spotify to have his podcast be held only on Spotify. So you can only access Joe's podcast on Spotify. You can't listen to it on Apple, can't listen to it on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Podcast, whatever. Only on Spotify. Allegedly for $100 million. So if that doesn't show you that podcasting is very much here to stay, that it's not a flash in the pan, that it's not a trend that might go away, then I think that's pretty strong evidence. And part of my job today on this webinar is to show you more evidence of that as well, so that you'll in turn, like me, invest your time and potentially money, although you can launch podcasts with absolutely zero money down, just using all of the using one of these and the free software that you can download from the apps. And yes, how long is a piece of string when it comes to spending money on podcasting? Absolutely, you can go absolutely crazy. But that's just to show you. So 100 million, is a lot of money in anybody's books, and there's a whole bunch of other people out there who are also making really good money from podcasting. So 190 million downloads. Again, clearly one of the attractions for Spotify was the fact that he has a huge show. Allegedly the biggest show in the world at the moment. 190 million downloads, which is insane. You compare that to how many people might be watching terrestrial TV these days, accessing content on different platforms, and that is a huge number in anybody's book. And he's clearly been rewarded. I don't know the length of the contract talked about. I've heard different stories on that front, like 6-7 years, that kind of a handcuffs deal, I guess you would call it. So what I'd like to share with you today, I'd like you to take away from this, is that podcasting is here to stay. It's not too late to start for anybody, you included. Anybody with zero tech knowledge, and I include myself in that when I started my podcast, can start a podcast. 4, it's not expensive. 5, people will want to listen to you, trust me. And you only need to start with, I think, about 4 hours a week to invest in launching your podcast. Once launched, to spend 4 hours a week, and that will be for a weekly show, for example, like a 1 hour weekly show. I think you need another 3 hours to be able to research the guest, to edit it. If you want to edit it, my advice is to outsource that from day one and focus on what you enjoy the most, the reason you're getting into podcasting. And for a lot of people like myself, it's to chat to the people you want to meet, to connect with the people that you want to connect with. Everything else I now outsource to my team, to do for me. To start with, the first thing that I outsourced was the editing and the production, and everything else I did myself. But now everything is outsourced, other than me rocking up and chatting to my guest. And that's literally it. So podcasting is here to stay. Before I do, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, because you can Google me afterwards and find out that, reasons why I think you should be listening to me, and, why I think that I have some knowledge to impart when it comes to podcasting. So my podcast is called Screw It, Just Do It. It's a show where I interview successful entrepreneurs and share that knowledge with my audience, their successful strategies on how they built successful businesses. And that's on a Wednesday, where I do a Q&A with the likes of, for example, a Ray Kelvin, founder of Ted Baker, a Richard Reed, founder of Innocent, a Holly Tucker, MBE, founder of Not on the High Street, Rowena Bird, founder of Lush. People like that from all over the world. And then I now do, it's a twice weekly show. On a Saturday, I do a Saturday solo episode, which is just my take on a particular subject that I want to talk about. And that's a shorter episode. So my podcast, last year, I focused on it and made it my #1 goal to get a #1 podcast, having skirted around that in the charts, out of the charts, week by week. And I got my own show to become a #1 ranked podcast. You can see it on the left there, Screw It, Just Do It, Alex Chisnall. And we did that consistently on a number of occasions and in a number of different categories. So to choose a category when you launch a podcast, you can choose 3 categories. And I've played around with that just to, again, further my knowledge really, and see what's possible, what's not possible. So we managed to get a #1 ranked show in 5 different categories, from technology through to podcasting, entrepreneurship, business, etc. And we've gotten our clients to the top of the podcast charts as well, and have had 95% of both students from my course and clients that we work with in the agency format, where we create the podcast for them. 95% of our clients have got into the top 20 iTunes, Apple charts as well, which for me gives you visibility, which gets you extra subscribers, extra downloads. So is that something that you would like? Let me know. Who watching this webinar today would like to launch a podcast and to get their podcast in the charts? Would you want a top 20 podcast? Would you want a top 50 podcast, a top 100, a #1, a top 10? You tell me. Let me know. Thank you, Dale, for posting up there. Let me know who, if you wanted to launch a podcast, would you want to get it in the charts, or for you, is that not particularly of a concern? For example, Barry, you just launched yours, haven't you? So you're interested. I mean, for me, I think you all want to be trying to launch your podcast into the charts. Kathy says a top 10 at least. Look, for me, if you do that, it means extra eyeballs on your podcast. If it lands in the chart, you then, when you launch, you have a 6-week opportunity to get your podcast into the Apple New and Noteworthy section. And then again, if you do consistently well there, you get the opportunity to get your podcast into one of the curated collections. And that's how one of the reasons why you can build a global audience, because people from all over the world will be able to see your podcast in those collections. And more eyeballs on your show is only going to mean more subscribers and more downloads. And the way the algorithm works at the moment, it's a combination of new subscribers, new downloads, and new ratings and reviews. And that's why, for me, everybody has an opportunity to make a splash. Why, for example, 1 week my podcast was higher than Joe Rogan. You go, hang on a minute, he gets 190 million downloads. How can you get a #1 podcast ahead of him? Because it's based on new algorithms, new subscribers, new downloads, new ratings and reviews. So if you're active, if you're proactive on that front, a certain hour, certain time of day, you will be able to do the same. So HM says #1 podcast. I think that's important to strive for when you want to become a thought leader. 100%. Farah, not launched yet, recording episodes and crafting strategy. Yes, I see. Kathy says top 10 at least. Yeah, and HM, that was it for me, to be honest with you. When I was hosting workshops on podcasting, hosting my own show, obviously, started an agency off the back of it. But for me, I had a multiple #2 podcasts. And I thought, you can't really put number 2 podcaster Alex Chisnall, just didn't sound quite right. I wanted to go, okay, let's go all in on getting a #1. Let's screenshot that evidence, and let's use that. I agree with you. For me, it was important to do that. Georgina says, I like mine as an extra offering. My YouTube is the most popular offering I have at the moment. Dale, do you do the same day and time each week? Yeah, Dale. And Hunt, do you know what the interesting thing is? People will let you know about it once you've built a following, when your show does not come out on the same time on the same day. And I've had a couple of occasions where we've screwed up on that front, where we've scheduled a post, and for whatever reason, with regards to the technology, it hasn't come out, and people are waiting. I wait for my favorite podcast on a Monday when I wake up, because it's scheduled in the US. How I Built This is my favorite podcast. That's what got me into podcasting. If it's not there, I want to know why. And when they put out episodes that are repeats, because they clearly don't have any new content that week, I feel cheated, because I want to listen to a brand new episode. And yet, Georgina, absolutely, you can do that. YouTube is your most popular offering. And what I want to show you with the podcast, guys, as well, is that a lot of people are concerned when it comes to any new form of media that they've got to create new content. With podcasting, I disagree. You just need to repurpose existing content into your podcast. So you can take a YouTube channel, turn it into a podcast. You can take a blog, turn that into a podcast, and vice versa. You can take your podcast and turn that into a vlog, a YouTube channel, and a blog all at the same time. So moving on, folks, we've managed since the back of that, and I probably in hindsight set my goals too low by just saying I wanted to get a #1 podcast, because off the back of that, we've had #1 podcasts everywhere from the UK to Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, Switzerland, totally and utterly random countries that I never thought possible. And my show is now listened to in over 140 countries worldwide, even in countries I never knew existed, a country called the Åland Islands that lies between Finland and Russia. I've done my research when I saw that one crop up. But, it didn't start that way. It didn't start that way for me. I mean, you can see I looked at this the other week, just when I put these slides together, just to see. And, did I ever think that it would be possible to get a number 15 ranked show in Egypt in between the likes of Gary Vee at number 13 and Tim Ferriss at number 17? No, I didn't. And my first ever guest on my show is at number 5, Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. So it's incredible what you can achieve with podcasting. And if you think, you go back, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, what would it cost you to get your message, whether you want to become a thought leader in your space, whether you want to sell your products and services to your customers, attract a new audience, eventually get them to become paying customers, what would it have cost you in years gone by? You'd have had to use full page ads in mainstream newspapers, on radio stations, etc. But now you don't have to. You can literally get your message to, in my case, 140 countries across the world through your podcast. And that's pretty damn powerful in my book. And that's achievable for all of you watching it. If I could do it, honestly, I am not a techie at all by any stretch of the imagination, then anybody can do it. So, for example, just going to give you a couple of examples and then move straight on to the main content. Is create a podcast for Festival of Enterprise. That's how I first came into contact with these guys, and we had interviews with the likes of Lord Villamoria, who I am chatting to again tomorrow on a live webinar, Piers Linney from Dragon's Den, Camilla Ainsworth from The Apprentice, and a number of others, as you can see. Got to meet my first Lord, as you can see there, Lord Young, who was in Margaret Thatcher's government, David Cameron's government. We created a podcast for ex-forces there who helped the military transition to a civilian life by starting their own businesses and becoming entrepreneurs. Love working with these guys because entrepreneurship is very close to my heart. And then working with brands across the world. NPE are a health and fitness brand based in America, but with offices in Australia and the UK. And then consulting with brands such as Grenade, #1 chocolate bar in the UK, #1 sports nutrition brand, when they launched their own podcast and then wanted to know why they couldn't get it in the top 200 in Apple and why they weren't getting the downloads that they would expect to get when they were attracting the likes of Alfie Days and his 16 million YouTube founders on their podcast. So, within 7 days, I got them a top 20 podcast, and since then, it's in the top 10. So why now? Why now? So for me, this is the biggest opportunity that there is for podcasting. Dale says, so you use chartable.com for your podcast analytics. 100% Dale, good to see you've done some research there. Georgina, I agree, repurpose as much, which is what you'd like to do. And yes, you can do that. Chartable.com basically houses the top 200 chart for every country in the world that tracks podcast downloads. And you get great analytics now. massively surprised when I saw the graph, the demographic of who my audience was. I always thought it was quite 50-50, male, female. I assumed the audience was 35 to 55 because I fitted into that age group. Maybe in hindsight now, I don't know why I thought that, but when I looked and I was showing somebody this yesterday, it was nearly 80% 18 to 29-year-old females. Totally random in my book how that is, but that's incredibly useful information when you want to double down and target that audience, more of that audience, your ideal listener, to listen to your show. And now, you know, one of the first exercises I get people to do, we did a live training on this in my popular group, is first of all working out what you want to podcast about, you know, and for me, that's where your what you're passionate about, your interests meet where your expertise lies. And I'll just give you a really quick example. You know, I love rugby. I've got a rugby coaching qualification. Boom, I could do a podcast talking about rugby quite easily. I love entrepreneurship. I worked for Virgin's startup, Richard Branson's not-for-profit, helping entrepreneurs with mentoring and funding. Boom, I feel I could talk about entrepreneurship. And it's got to be something that you want to talk about for years, not months. You can't get bored talking about this subject. And then the next exercise I get people to do, which again we did a live training on, was finding out who your ideal listener is. You know, are they male? Are they female? How old are they? Are they married? Are they single? How much household income do they have? Where do they hang out? You know, on social, for example, are they, you know, primarily Instagram? Are they primarily Twitter, LinkedIn, etc.? It's finding out where your audience hangs out so you can then target more of that same ideal client avatar. So, would you be a publisher or an advertiser, though? I assume publisher. Yes, so you would be a publisher, Dale. You'd be publishing your own podcast on there. So, moving forward, guys, why now? And I know you're not going to be able to see this brilliantly. Again, another reason why I'm not a great techie. I need one of my team to knock these up into more professional slides. But I just wanted to get you the most up-to-date stats that I could find. So during lockdown, between the middle of April and middle of March and middle of April, globally, podcasting listening increased by 10%. Some highlights there would be the UK, 20% increase. Italy, 22%, France, 31%. And interestingly, you know, this is Acast, which are the biggest podcasting company, hosting platform. We've got a number of our clients on this platform. They have a free option, and they also have paid options for if you want to become influencer, for example, paid option there, which we'll use. But look at the top global trending content from just 4 weeks ago. And I'd love to find out, you know, when they publish the next one, which should be later this week, how that's changed. So science and medicine is number one. Society, you know, no shit, Sherlock. People are concerned about a pandemic. They want to find out more information. Society and culture, no surprise, you know, massive shift in how we work, how we interact has happened over the last 8 weeks. Kids and families, wow, we've all been locked up together, haven't we? Kids being homeschooled up to Monday just gone, where my youngest daughter went back to school. One's still at home. And TV and film, well, we're all needed entertaining, haven't we? So that's been high. And then comedy, well, we've all needed to have a great bloody laugh at the same time, because it's all been so serious, hasn't it? It's all been such, you know, serious, you know, gloom and doom stories about, you know, people obviously dying, which is incredibly sad, and, you know, hundreds of thousands of people. And, you know, let's hope that, you know, there isn't a second wave, that it's not like the Spanish flu was, you know, a century ago. But people need an outlet, you know, whether that's TV, film, comedy, etc. So these, for me, super interesting as a podcast publisher, as you say, Dale, and also as a content creator, as a podcast agency owner, to see what people are really interested in. So we mentioned earlier Spotify. So these are the reasons, again, why I think now is a great time. Hopefully, I want you to take away from this why this is a great opportunity for you who are interested in creating your own podcast, why this is a great opportunity. So Spotify, traditionally, you could only listen to music on Spotify. They realized people were leaving their platform to go to Apple to listen to music on iTunes. What's interesting here is that, if they went there, they could also find podcasts on Apple. So does that mean that people would stay on Apple or not come back to Spotify? If you've got a subscription here, a paid subscription, slightly different ball game. But Spotify went all in last year. They spent $500 million, 500 million or more acquiring podcast companies to create exclusive content for them. Their own platform called Anchor, Anchor, that's free for you to interview guests. So you can make a call from the platform to someone across the world, interview them. It records that content and hosts it on the platform. You can record your intro on there. Hi, I'm Alex. Welcome to Screw It, Just Do It. Your music on there, and just drag and drop it all into an episode. Then upload, one button, distributes it to all the other platforms. So they've got their own platform. And now they've got to spend more money, another 100 million on Joe Rogan's show. So super interesting what's happening in this space. There you go. Spotify buys Anchor, a platform, as I mentioned. Check it out. It is free. Acast have a free option as well. Spotify have improved Anchor. You get better analytics as of only a month ago. They've upped their game there. And look, another opportunity, as we're now starting to get back on the road, as the automotive industry starts to recover, all new cars are coming with this technology. You can directly listen to podcasts by pressing that purple podcast button, that is the Apple podcast button, to listen to podcasts in your car. So it doesn't take a genius to work out podcast consumption is going to go up even further, because a significant percentage of people listen to their podcast during their commute. So as people start returning back to work, are they going to listen to radio? Are they going to listen to music? Are they going to listen to podcasts? Well, now there is the opportunity to directly, no messing about with technology, just press that button and listen to your favorite podcast show. So, opportunity meets opportunity for me. And listen, Apple have not, taken Spotify's activity unnoticed. So last summer, they decided to get a bit creative with their categories that I mentioned earlier. So, for example, before where you'd have business as a category, there's now, and they would have marketing and management as a subcategory of that. They now have marketing as a separate category, management as a separate category, investing as a separate category, entrepreneurship as a separate category, social businesses as a separate category. So what that means to you is more opportunity to get into the chart, to get more eyeballs on your podcast, to get more listeners, and to get seen and found, and to build your influence. Google Podcasts, clearly taking an interest here as well. You used to be able to, use Google as a search engine and find people's websites. Then you could find video was being indexed, and videos would come up quite highly in the searches. Well, now audio also comes up in the searches. So I've seen my podcast coming up in the top 10 searches for different people that I've had on my show. So super, super interesting when you're getting these different companies all competing against one each other, and that's only a good thing in my opinion. So question for you all out there: how many podcasts are there out there in the world? And do not Google this, even though I just showed you Google. I just put it down, just off the top of your head. How many podcasts do you think there are out there in the world? Let me know your answers, please. Everybody who's on here, let me know. How many podcasts do you think there are out there in the world? I'll tell you, YouTube users, there's over 1 billion YouTube users, active YouTube users, that is, out there. There are 20 million active blogs. There's over 1 billion blogs. But like many blogs, one I started when I had health and fitness business, is no longer active, but the 20 million that are active at the moment. And before I hit the next slide, I'm going to come back and see what answers we've got. Justin says 50 million. So does Catherine. HM says 100 million. Farah says 500 million. Any other answers? Jordan says 1 million. What do you think, folks? Anybody else want to cast a guess before I move on? Dale, 500 million. Lorraine, 500 million. Jordan, you are our winner today. Congratulations. First time I did this, nobody got it. Everyone was way out. So yeah, the answer is 1 million podcasts. I mean, does that sound big? Does that sound small to you? I don't know. For me, and that was as of April the 20th this year, Apple posted that they had reached 1 million podcasts registered. That's not even active. That's the interesting thing here. You know, compare it to blogs, 20 million active blogs, YouTube, 1 billion plus active YouTube users. For me, it's small. Yeah, Justin, absolutely. I think it's small as well. So therefore, there's an opportunity for all of you. It's small, but the audiences globally has gone up 10%, 20% in the UK. There are more listeners out there. So for me, it's a grain of sand on a beach podcast compared to YouTube, compared to blogs. It really is, you know, I don't know, star in the universe. I'm getting a bit woo-woo now, I know, so I'll be quiet. But you get the idea of what I'm trying to get across to you here, everybody, I hope. Dale, do you put your podcast into each platform separately, or is there one that will put it out onto them all? Yeah, literally all of the platforms, once you set it up, and some of them make it easier than others to be able to do that. Acast is very easy. Click on this button, register your podcast on Spotify. Click on this button, register it on SoundCloud. And there's at least 8 platforms that you want to be on. For me, you might as well be on all of them, because people listen to content in different ways. So you might as well be on all of them. And there's going to be around 10. And there's going to be more of those coming out. But it's a very fractured industry. None of them speak to each other. You know, it's a relatively small industry. Podcasting started in 2004. People think it's only a couple of years old. It's been around for a while, and there's been peaks and troughs during that time. But there's never been a peak like there is now. And whilst some of you might go, oh, there's 1 million now. You know, listenership's gone up. Oh, it's going to be so difficult to get found, to get heard. It's not, and I'm going to show you some examples to show you what you can do. Hopefully my example I showed you about Egypt over there earlier, you know, is a good example of what you might be saying. Well, Alex, you know, you've had a show for 3 years, you've got an audience, you've got following, all those kinds of things. And yes, those are true. So I'm going to show you some examples why it's not, yeah, same Dell. You would expect it to be more, but that is a 24% increase from 2018 to 2019, doubled in the last 5 years, and it doubled again in the last 14 months. So January 2019, there were 500,000 podcasts. January 2020, just 5 months ago, there was 850,000 podcasts. And now, in the last 5 months, it's gone up another 150,000 to get to 1 million. So, you know, and they announced that in April. So in 16 months, it's doubled. And prior to that, it had doubled previously. So you could see how quickly this is happening. I was chatting to somebody in New York recently who does similar thing to what I do. And she was saying she thinks it's very similar to when blogs first came out. And she thinks there's a 10-year opportunity for any new technology, be that blog, podcasting. And she thinks we're about year 4, year 5, coming up to halfway through that journey. So she still thinks there's a 5 or 6 year opportunity to get in, to build a community, to, you know, again, make money, to get your message across, whatever your motivation is here, guys, you know, to do so. And this has gone up. So this is now 8.52 million people. I need to update my slides. I know I did this a week ago, but when I did that new statistic, that listenership in the UK has gone up 20%. There's now 8.5 million people in the UK listening to podcasts each week. And an interesting statistic, we mentioned sponsorship before. 75% of advertisers surveyed plan to increase their podcast ad spend. So that shows you that 3/4 of advertisers were happy with advertising through podcasts, that their message was getting through to their audience, and you would assume that they were getting a return on their investment by paying to advertise on their podcast. And it's coming up to $1 billion industry now, podcasting. I think it's around 750 million industry. So we're not far off. Again, people said last year that, you know, getting to 1 million podcasts and getting to $1 billion industry were going to be landmarks, and I agree. There's a quote for you just to read. I'm just going to check the polls as well. Have a read of that. Keith says, do any of your guests charge to be interviewed via the podcast? No, they don't, Keith, but people might very well do. It's a really interesting question you asked there. So people now, I mean, there's not a day goes by I get hit up, is probably the best word, by a combination of PR agencies and podcast agencies with people trying to position their clients to get on my show. I get 6 to 10 of those a day. I might pick one every month, like less than 1% as a guest on my show, because most of them position them in the wrong way. They're trying to sell me the business, and I want to know the story behind the business, the story behind the person who created the business. And that's, for my show. Today I said yes to one, and just to give you an idea, I'm all about growing my own show. PR agency that I had worked with before, as in I've hosted their clients on my show. They are asking me to interview someone for my show that has a massive social following in the world, over millions of followers, and that's only going to grow my show. She's a thought leader in her space, which is the fashion industry. So for me, she's an entrepreneur in the fashion space. It's a no-brainer for me if I want to grow my show and bring it to a wider audience to get her on my show. So for me to get into attract listeners who are in the fashion space, that's quite interesting for me to do that. So but interestingly, when I've worked with brands and working with a nail brand, $300 million nail brand, and they were asking me what the budget was to get guests on the show, and I was saying to them, you don't need to pay people to get on your show, especially being the company you are. You're going to have, and their guest list was pretty incredible. It was all A-listers, and we were working with them to get more up and coming people on their show as well, to give it a bit more credibility on the show as well, different angle. And I was saying, you don't need to. People treat it, very similar. Now, PR agencies will pitch their client. You can be on this newspaper, you can be on this radio show, you can be on this podcast, and it's very accepted. That wasn't the case 3 years ago when I started. I have to say. Interested to know, those of you who haven't taken part in the poll, let me know. So still, what you're most interested in about podcasting, still selling your products and services is the leader. And most people on here, 50% of people are business owners as well. Marketing professionals in the minority today, which wasn't the case when I ran this webinar last. So if you haven't taken part in the polls, and I know probably 50% of you at least haven't, let me know. We'd love to know your answer to those two questions. So moving on, folks, nearing the end now. So for me, a podcast is a brand's ownable, scalable, intimate stage outside of the Facebook powerhouse. With podcasting, the audience doesn't exist in just one place, in the hands of just one private company. The podcast can live across multiple platforms at the same time. And Dale, I think it was, hinted on this earlier. So, and I'm going to give you an example now, but before I do, just to clarify that statement, is that I've seen so many people build their audiences on a private platform, like the big Instagram following, a big Facebook following, a LinkedIn following, whatever it is, TikTok following. But that, you don't own that audience. That's owned by Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. Podcasting, you're creating the content, your library of content, your legacy, whatever happens, that's there till the end of time. If Facebook changes the algorithm, locks you out of your own profile page, which I have seen happen, somebody in my space, that happened to very recently. Him and his girlfriend ran a Facebook group. That's how they operated their business. That's how they sold their products and services. Facebook kicked them out of their own group. Don't know why. That's what happened, because other people in the group were posting up on their behalf. How difficult is it going to be then to set up another page with your profile? Because they've got your details, they've got your private details then. So for me, what I love about podcasting is that you own that content. It's hosted very much like a website on a private platform that you either have for free, like Anchor, or like Acast. You can have a paid option, and a paid option is only like $25 a month. And then you distribute it. It lives on all these other platforms. And it lives on Spotify, only on Spotify for Joe Rogan, on Apple, on Google, on SoundCloud, on Stitcher, on iHeartRadio. And then you can distribute that podcast again across social media where people can click on it to access it. And we've all got different apps that we listen to podcasts through as well, of which there are innumerable ones out there. So I want to give you examples. So if you think, you don't, how difficult is it going to be for you to get found? You don't have an existing following, too old, don't have the technology, whatever part of imposter syndrome that you're clinging onto there. And yes, we've all had it, myself included. It's why I've never videoed my podcast, because I'm quite happy hiding behind audio. But now, boom, I've done 100 live webinars on video. I think I've clearly conquered that by accident, through necessity. But Jonathan here, Jonathan Bowman Perks, Inspiring Leadership Podcast. So Jonathan did my course, and then he became a client as well, where we took care of everything for him. He didn't have an Instagram account, didn't have a Facebook account. He had a small number of people on LinkedIn. He had launched a YouTube channel, but subscribers were under 100. Nobody was, not many people were watching his show. Boom. Number 9 ranked podcast for Jonathan. You can see there, chartable.com. And that's in the UK. Number 9 ranked, and that's in management. Category is management there. You can see it, number 9. And off the back of that, Jonathan has now had a top 20 podcasts in France, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, Australia. You name it. I sent him one the other night. I'll have to find it on my phone while I'm talking to you on here, just to remind myself which one that actually was with Jonathan. I can find it on my phone here. There you go. Then if you can see that. Number 8 in Luxembourg, small country, but he's in amongst the likes of. Number 10 was Reid Hoffman, the founder of Facebook's podcast. So he's higher than that. Business Wars by Wondery, incredibly popular podcast at number 5. Michael Hyatt, massive influencer at number 7. And Jonathan is rubbing shoulders with the likes of those guys. And that's from, like I say, just having a small following on LinkedIn. And we're talking a couple of thousand people. I'm not talking like tens of thousands of people at all. And he's been able to achieve that through launching his own podcast and becoming a thought leader in the management space, where he interviews leading CEOs of blue chip companies, and his business is a coaching business. So it doesn't take a genius to work out. He could be interviewing his potential clients that he wants to work with on his podcast, and then it's a really soft sell to have those coaching clients. On the podcast, you're asking them what their biggest frustrations are, what their biggest challenges are. You're effectively doing a mentoring, a coaching session as part of that interview. You're then connected to that person. Over time, I've seen people, make money from podcasts by using that very tactic before they've even launched their show. Just what, say, Farah's doing, recording her content now before launch and tweaking it. You could be having those conversations before you launch. So that is very, very achievable. And for me, that's the number 1 tactic when it comes to monetizing a podcast or selling your products and services. You want to be targeting your ideal audience, your ideal client avatar. So you are your own media. You literally need this in this day and age, folks. That's all you need is a phone. As I said before, everything that you need to launch a podcast is in your phone. You can access Anchor, which is the free hosting platform that Spotify own. You can download an app to record your content as well. Everything that you need, you can do in your phone. You can use Zoom to call somebody and record content as well. So you are your own media. You know, you can broadcast everything from your phone. We had in the Podpreneur group somebody do a tutorial, Ted from If Only They Knew podcast. He uses Anchor and it's generational. I get it. You know, he's in his early 20s. He does everything on his phone. He literally edits it, record it. For me, I like a nice big screen to work with, maybe a couple of screens, to be honest with you. I like to see everything in big. He does it all on his phone. Boom, 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 boom. Drag and drop, drag and drop. Easily done, and it can all be done from your phone. Equipment, as I just said, is all in our smartphones these days. That's all you need. Yes, you can do what I did, which in hindsight was a mistake, but you know, long-term plan. I went out, my producer James told me I needed to upgrade my equipment if I was now doing webinars teaching people how to podcast. So I went out and spent, you know, getting best equipment I could for mobile equipment I could take with me to London. So 2 years I spent doing interviews remotely, like via Zoom. So I'm very familiar with that. I then decided I want to connect personally with as many of my interviewees as possible to make that human connection. So I'll go to London once a month and where I'll be able to meet most of my interviewees one-to-one and record those interviews. I literally recorded one on my expensive new equipment before lockdown, and it's been sat under my bed gathering dust. I know somebody asked a question earlier about improving your audio quality. And yeah, drop me a message because I'm going to run out of time. I'm a nightmare. I talked for 15 minutes before we actually got to the main content. I know I will get better at this, I promise you. I'm new to webinars. Or myself hosting them, not other people. I've done 100 other people hosting them. But I will answer that question. I will hang out on here afterwards for half an hour for anybody who wants to ask me any questions as well. So I will answer that afterwards, but I will finish off the presentation first, guys. So as I said, I just showed you a physical one of those instead. So interested to know, who here wants to expose their brand to a new audience? Post up in the comments. Let me know. So Lorraine, how can you generate leads from your podcast? I will answer that again at the end. I've just, mentioned that a little bit there with the Jonathan Bowman Perks podcast. For me, that's how you generate leads for your podcast, by targeting the audience that you want to access. So for Jonathan Bowman Perks, it is to get other leaders to listen to his podcast, and then get those leaders on his show where he can then soft sell his coaching services. So yes, me. Expand UK audience and certain Euro audiences, says Catherine. Yes. Miss says not new audiences necessarily, but more of the audiences we already target. Absolutely. So I've been doing that with brands. They just want to use it as a brand awareness piece for their existing audiences and let them know about any new products and services that they're getting. But at the same time, you land your podcast into one of these charts and get it into a curated collection, you will get a new audience listening to your podcast anyway. For example, who wants to access Gen Z as their audience, because they are the largest demographic that listens to podcasts. It's nearly, I think it's something like 48% of Gen Z listen to podcasts. So if you want to attract 18 to, I think it's 28-year-olds, 29-year-olds, with regards to either listening to your podcast or with regards to selling them your products and services, then I was having this conversation with the military, one of the 4 branches of our military recently who wanted to talk podcasts with me. They're advertising very old school, broadsheet newspapers, TV, radio ads. I'm like, how many 18 to 29-year-olds read broadsheet newspapers, listen to commercial radio and watch terrestrial TV? None of them is probably my answer, or a very small percentage, because they watch YouTube and they listen to podcasts. So that's where my advice is, that they want to be, this particular arm of the military want to be targeting to recruit people. And they struggle to recruit people. And not one person had come through their January training course to qualify to become, and I won't say who, the next branch of the military. Not one person. So they're clearly targeting the wrong people. Farah, you've got to jump into a meeting. Thanks so much for your time and insights. Connect with you on LinkedIn, and we'd love to follow up through Popular. Yeah, sorry, I'm running over. Thank you for joining. And this is just the end of the, you're not going to really miss anything other than I'm going to give you the links to my Podpreneur group, and also to the free Facebook group, and also just the website as well. So, and you're going to find that information, Farah. So thank you. That's the only person who's left so far. I can just see one person's dropped off this podcast, guys. So stay with me if you've got another 5 minutes. I'm just going to finish up. So this shows you another example from the complete opposite spectrum. Jonathan Bowman Perks, in his mid to late 50s, coming into podcasting. Scott Stockdale here, complete opposite. He is Gen Z. He's in his early 20s. And I'm illustrating this example because Scott had, and he won't mind me saying this, something like 700 people on Instagram following him, under 500 connections on LinkedIn, didn't have a Facebook account. It's not his generation that goes on Facebook, but he launched a podcast called Entrepreneurs Can Party with Scott Stockdale. Boom! 6 days after launching, this happened. You look down, number 10 in the entrepreneurship chart. Look who else is in the chart with him. Number 4, talking about him again, the Diary of a CEO podcast by Stephen Bartlett, CEO of Social Chain, the biggest social influencer agency in the world. Holly Tucker from Not on the High Street, who I've had on my show, at number 6 with her Conversations of Inspiration podcast. The Ed Milet Show, huge in America. Rachel Hollis, the Rise podcast, another huge show. And Sharon, yes, this is recorded. As soon as I press stop, this will be here again for you to watch the replay, and it will also then be taken over to the Festival of Enterprise YouTube channel as well. So I know a couple of you have got to go, and I appreciate your time. Just finishing up, this is to show you again the opposite side of the spectrum. If you are, young, you don't have a massive following, you likewise can launch a successful podcast and get your message, your mission heard throughout the world. And off the back of that, Scott's podcast now, and this was only in March, guys. By guys, I mean girls and men. His podcast is now being heard in over 30 countries across 5 continents. Amazing. But Scott, again, came through my course. And look, podcasts can help you attract new listeners. Gen Z, as I said, is the most popular listening demographic. But all ages, all parts of society listen to podcasts. Gives you the opportunity, which is the headline for this webinar, to amplify your story. For me, podcasting is all about telling stories. You've got video, you've got the written word, and you've got audio. You've got 3 ways to create content these days. And for me, podcasting is the greatest way to do it through the audio channel. You can repurpose that content. You can film your podcast, put it out as a vlog on your YouTube channel. You can get a transcription of that podcast and put it out as a blog hosted on your website. You can then turn that into a month's worth of content by disseminating that into different micro content across different social media platforms. You can have video snippets, audiograms. You can have images with quotes on, all sorts of things you can use to promote your podcast. And that's how you grow a podcast. Many other different ways, but you want to be promoting it. And as I say, as I've shown consistently throughout this presentation, I hope you get to educate your audience about your products and services. So that's your existing audience. You can then obviously attract a new audience, and over time, tell them your stories and turn them into paying customers, as I say, turn them into paying customers, which ultimately I think 99% of brands, entrepreneurs are going to want to do. If you're a marketing professional, surely you're going to want to turn that audience into paying customers for the brand that you work for as well. And get over yourself is my advice. Last couple of slides, guys. Get over yourself. Get out of your own way. Imposter syndrome. Don't like the sound of your own voice. Don't like how you appear on video. Get over it. It took me a while to get over mine. I sat on my interviews for 90 days. Sorry, we launched my podcast in May. We've just celebrated 3 years. I sat on it for so long. And in the end, I did get over myself. And my only regret, I've got one regret when it comes to podcasting, that's that I didn't launch my podcast sooner. That's literally it. And last couple of words of wisdom for me is be consistent. People, as I alluded to earlier, expect your show to come out at the same time on the same day. And another way you can launch a podcast, if you don't want to, take on the commitment of a weekly show, you can launch a series, and that's very much what a lot of brands that I'm working with are doing, from a VC, from a venture capital firm, through to a zoo and everything in between. You can have a new service launch alongside launching your podcast, and launch it as a series. And a series can be anything from, I've done a series of 4 podcasts through to a series of 10. For me, I think the sweet spot is 6 to 8 episodes, and then promote each episode for 1 to 2 weeks as well. And as I alluded to earlier, turn one weekly podcast episode into a month's worth of content. A lot of people struggle to make content. For me, I've got too much content. It's trying to work out what to actually put out there. And let me just leave you with this. For me, you want to be marketing your business through starting your own podcast. It gives you the opportunity to promote your business and be heard, to make podcasting part of your marketing strategy. And don't be a number 7. What do I mean by that? 7 is the number that people traditionally, historically stop. They don't go any further. Majority of people don't get past episode 7. If you'd like to learn how to not become one of the 7, then join me in my free Facebook group, Podpreneur, and we'll show you how you can have longevity. What next for most of you, okay? What is going to be next? And for me, you want to start, okay? How do you start? Take action. What's one thing you can do today? Is it sending an email? Is it making a phone call? Is it researching a website? I'll give you a first point of call. If you want to join our Facebook group, you'll be with a bunch of like-minded people who are looking to create, launch, grow podcasts. Majority of people here haven't launched a podcast. We've had, I think about 12 launch. We've had another maybe 30 people, 20, 30 people join who've already got existing podcasts and they want to learn how to grow. So every week I'm doing a live training with somebody who's already launched a podcast and taking the learnings from them, giving them advice, and then answering all your questions when it comes to podcasting as well. So if you just want to get started and you want to know where to start for the free resource and also the accountability that comes with your peers, we launched this, like I say, 6 weeks ago. This is an old screenshot last week. We've now got over 650 members in there, which is awesome for me. To get 100 people a week joining the group is pretty epic. So screenshot that. If you've got your phone, take a screenshot, or just search Podpreneur in Facebook to access that. Those of you who want to do it yourself, then you can have a look at my podcast launch program. That's accessed under the Learn tab on my website, which is podpreneur.co.uk. Again, take a screenshot of that. And that's basically everything that I have ever learned about podcasting over the last 3 years through my own show and through helping different brands launch their shows as well. All of those learnings, absolutely, it's an absolute ball ache, like I said earlier, to do, but I put everything into this, and there's, I think, 10 hours of content, another 10 hours of live webinars, and literally hand-holding you through the whole process. And also I do a live weekly webinar Q&A with me, where you get to ask me all of your questions that month as you work through the course. And it comes with its own app. So essentially you get to learn at your own pace, wherever you want, whenever you want, and on whatever device you want. So you can literally carry my course around in your pocket, press the app, and listen to it in really little bite-sized chunks. They're like 5-minute lessons, but we've got 9 chapters in there for you to access. And it's everything from learning how to create it. And for me, the key is in the pre-launch and the post-launch strategy. It's why I called it the podcast launch program, because for me, it's all about getting that visibility by launching into iTunes, Apple Podcasts successfully. And look, Apple aren't stupid. They've noticed the rise in podcasts. They've gone from just being Apple to now being, instead of just being iTunes, they're getting rid of iTunes. There's now going to be Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, and Apple TV. 3 things. So it shows you again, hopefully, the opportunity that these big tech giants are recognizing when it comes to podcasting. So screenshot that. You want to join, then please join my course there. For those of you who want more direct access, and for me, these are people who are super serious about becoming a thought leader in their space. Those of you who want to learn how to grow a community, which is what I've done with my podcast, and I've gotten my clients to do as well, the likes of Jonathan, Scott, and then we've got other brands that we're working with, from iced coffee through to the military. Like I say, it's super interesting space to be in. But join my so I've changed this now. I need to change that up. So it is a mastermind, but I'm calling it Podpreneur Mentorship, because I'm going to be giving you direct access to me. Every month we're going to have live training with me, where you get to ask me all of your questions, and we'll also then during that month another separate session where I teach you a specific thing. For example, how to leverage YouTube to grow your podcast channel. Another one could be how to use Instagram to build a community around your podcast. So every month there's going to be 2 live trainings within here. You get direct access to me through my phone number on the WhatsApp group, which is there every day that you can message me. So yeah, that might be, like I say, more suited to those who are super serious about becoming a thought leader in their space and about growing a community. Those are the 2 kinds of people that I'm looking to help. Because my favorite part is the actual coaching, just like I'm doing here today. My favorite bit is the actual learning and teaching people. But also, for those of you who are, either entrepreneur with a small team that you can leverage, freelancers, or if you are a brand, if you're a startup through to a big blue chip brand, those are the services we offer. And we offer 3 done for you versions, literally 3 options, and we create the podcast for you. So we would literally do everything from the editing, the production, the design, the strategy, the promotion, music, the data analytics, etc. So it's right through from somebody who wants to create the content themselves and just want us to take care of the editing and production, right through to the other end where we help you book guests. And every one of the 3 options, the done for you versions, you get to spend time with me on the pre and post launch strategy. Because as I said, for me, that's the most important thing. You want to don't do what I did when I launched my podcast, which was not even realize that my podcast was live until it was too late to get into the new and noteworthy section. Because Apple doesn't send you a message to say it's live. They just send you a message to say we've received your application. For me, I learned the hard way. I had 2 downloads in week 1, clearly my mother and my wife, and I had to learn the hard way through 2 years of slogging my guts out, trying to grow my audience, to then focus on it last year to make it my #1 priority to get to a #1 podcast, which we achieved within the first 6 months. Yeah, learn from my failings is what I would encourage you to do. And whatever option you want to go for, guys, I'd love to connect with you, whether it's joining my free Facebook group, whether it's doing it yourself and accessing my course and learning how to do it all yourself and keeping things really on the low cost option. If you want more hands-on and access to what I've learned on a regular basis, then join my mentorship mastermind program. And if you want to literally hand over everything and work with us on a regular weekly basis, leveraging the team that you've got as well, and where nobody might have an insider knowledge on podcasting, then we offer a full podcast service agency with 3 done-for-you versions as well. So, look, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, it's dead easy. It's Alex Chisnall. Email is alex@screwitdoit.org, or you can WhatsApp me on 0755 444 3132. Screenshot that. If you haven't already connected with me, I should add my Facebook Podpreneur group on there at some point as well. Okay, so apologies for running 15 minutes over. I'm going to come back in and see any questions you want to answer. I'll hang around for another 15 minutes, guys, before I've got to jump on a call with a client that we're making a podcast for. Well, I'm going to leave that slide up. Catherine says she's going to see me on Facebook. Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Justin's got to go as well. Really interesting. Thank you, Justin. Requested to join the Facebook group, and will connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Sharon, who wants to watch the replay. Farah, thank you as well, who's connected with me on LinkedIn and Podpreneur. And after this, I will jump on the Podpreneur group and let you all in. There's just 3 really simple questions that you need to answer, just so I know what stage everybody's at. Are you brand new, or have you got an existing podcast? And it just helps me mold the content that we do every week on the show. So any questions that you've got, and I will go over the old questions here that you posted up and give some little pointers as well. But I would say if you want to access the free content that we do, jump into the Facebook group Podpreneur. If you want to find out more, like I say, you're more of a DIYer, you want to learn how to do it yourself, we've got the course. If you want more hand-holding, then we've got the mentorship program, and then we've got the 3 done-for-you versions as well. So let's have a look. Dale says, brilliant, thanks very much. Miss says, thank you as well. Jordan, great. So I've got a question. Any more questions, post them up, guys. If you've asked one before and I haven't answered it, please post it up again, and I will go through. So I'm going to stay on here for 15 minutes now. Thank you if you've got to go. I see about 30% of people have dropped off, which is totally cool. I totally understand. Sheridan says, fascinating talk. I'll drop you an email and connect on Facebook and LinkedIn. Awesome. Jordan, okay. Is it worth creating all the content first and then release slowly, especially if you are hesitant? Now, this is a great question, and this is the kind of stuff that I specialize in. Jordan, so thank you for that question. So for me, and this is where most of the people in my Podpreneur Facebook group haven't had all of the tactics, the strategy that I've literally put 3 years worth into my course, etc. on the mastermind, is that they've launched, but they've all launched with 1 episode. Okay, for me, you want to 10x your launch. Okay, and by doing that, I get all my clients and I tell all my students to record a month's worth of content. So maybe 4 or 5 shows. If you're looking for a weekly show, if it's a series, maybe record half the series, like 4 or 5 episodes, and launch with that. You can also record teaser or trailer episodes. When you go to the cinema and you see 1-2 minutes of the Star Wars movie that's coming at Christmas and the highlights of that. For me, that's what I do every week on my own show. You can check it out, screw it, just do it. We put that out, it gives you more content, it doubles your content every week as well. You can put a teaser trailer episode out on a Monday, giving a little teaser as about who the guest is or what the content is. But when you launch with a month's worth of content, Jordan, instead of sending, say you've got 1,000 followers and you send your 1,000 followers to your 1 episode, and you might get, 10% of your audience downloading, you get 100 downloads. Instead, if you sent your 1,000 people 10 episodes, sent them to your 10 episodes, you 10x the downloads. You get 1,000 downloads instead. So, do you think there's more chance of you landing with a splash in week 1 and I haven't got the slides, but one of my students, Chess Fernley, launched her podcast this week called the Common Ground Podcast. She followed everything I did. She asked all the right questions when she was on my course, and she landed day one into Apple's new and noteworthy section, number 56 in the podcast chart, in the science section as well, which is pretty competitive, and hats off to her for doing that. And she launched, funnily enough, with a month's worth of content. I think 3 episodes she went for. And, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people who launched in the Podpreneur group launched with 1 episode. And yes, you know, I'm not taking anything away. It's an amazing thing to do that. What I want to do is everybody to take that learning and launch, spend your time, you know, working on that content. And for me, I batch everything now. So I will go to London and say, spend a day and record all my interviews in 1 day. I'll then spend another day doing my intros and my outros to my podcast. You know, batch everything, batch your tasks, no matter whatever it is in life. It makes life easy for you. Roger also connecting on Facebook. Kathy says thanks. Georgina, thank you as well. Link up on Facebook. So Jordan is an accountant that is trying to shift into business development, mentoring, and how social media is impacting the accountancy industry. Hopefully I can get it started and join the Facebook group. Awesome. Funnily enough, I did have a conversation with an accountancy firm, probably like a SME type business with about 40 clients, and they decided not to go with the podcast because they didn't have the time to do it. And, you know, that is number one barrier for people. We've all got the same time, you know, we've all got 24 hours in a day, we've all got 7 days in a week, we've all got 31 days in a month. It's where your priorities lie, isn't it? And clearly, and I was speaking to a third party who was acting on their behalf, so I never got to speak directly to the directors of that accountancy firm. But thank you, Joyce. Thank you for joining as well. Thank you, HM. You got to leave as well. Appreciate it, buddy. Great to listen and learn from you. Thank you for sharing. For me, you know, I was speaking to someone on my course was in the business of will writing, for example. And I think, you know, no matter what, whether you're B2B, B2C, there's massive opportunity to set yourself up as a thought leader in the accountancy space. There's a friend of mine called Warren Munson, who has an accountancy firm called Inspire down here in Dorset, Jordan, and he launched a podcast called Evolve, you know, and he's definitely gone down that route, set himself up as a thought leader in that space. It's moved kind of away from the Inspire part, the accountancy part of his business, to be more of a business development. But that's how he made his name, how he built up a, you know, accountancy firm with like 50 plus people. This is another firm. But you could definitely 100% do that. And for me, if you're doing that, I chatted to one of my best friends back home in Cardiff about doing the same thing. He's asked me a number of times, but hasn't pulled the trigger on it. And I've said to him, you know, what you want to be doing is interviewing people, CEOs, or whoever the decision maker is in that organization that you would like to have as a client in your accountancy business. You know, so set yourself up as a thought leader in your niche, and whether that's accountancy or beds or social media or I don't know, in the automotive industry, whatever it is, you know, use your podcast. For me, I'm looking to launch a new podcast, funny enough. I would use it to target potential clients. That's how you make money in podcasts. Or I do a whole another webinar on like 12 ways to make money through podcasting. But for me, that is the one that most people don't think of, and for me, it's the biggest opportunity, because you could make money from this before your show's even live, when you're actually doing the interviews. You know, have you got a hit list of people that you want as clients? You want to be getting them on your show, and you know, 99 times out of 100, people are delighted to come on a podcast. They're chuffed to bits that you've asked them. Definitely a bit of ego inflation going on there as well. And then when you start promoting it to them as well, it's great. You know, for me, when I'm getting guests, and I've had, you know, people like Lewis Howes, who he'd just been on the Ellen show in the States and had gone huge. He was launching a book. People like that. I just had Alan Barrett from Grenade, #1 chocolate bar in the UK, #1 sports nutrition company. People like that, Piers Linney from Dragon's Den, Lord Villamoria, Cobra Beer Founder, all these guys. For me, I'm saying, look, I've got this platform. I want to share it with you. You've got the opportunity to tell my audience about you and your brand. For me, it's a massive opportunity, and that's why PR companies and podcast promotion companies will now contact me and offer their clients to be on my show, because it's an opportunity for them to showcase. And when you start promoting that episode then on social media, they get a whole week or 2 weeks worth of promotion from you. And the trick here is to get them to promote it to their audience as well. That's how you get a #1 podcast. That's how you get a top 10. That's how you get a top 20 podcast, because you will pick up a percentage of their followers when they subscribe to that episode. Okay, that's another whole webinar that I could talk to you about. Sheridan, Rufus, thank you as well. Thank you for sharing your expert knowledge. Alex, very interesting. Thank you, Rufus. Hope to connect with you as well. Likewise, Joyce. So Sheridan, I would like to set up a blog promoting curiosity and cover lots of different topics from careers, tech, entrepreneurship, etc. Would you suggest doing it in a series format or keep changing the subject each week? Great question, Sheridan. Really enjoy that question. So what I've learned here, a number of different brands have done, and I'm just about to launch a new podcast for somebody that I'll call an influencer. They've been on the Apprentice TV series, and for them, I've suggested a series format, and Grenade did the same. So what they did, they launched, I think it was 6 different episodes, and each one was different. So, and then they looked at the data. So they're a data-driven business, and they wanted to see which is the most popular podcast. Just going to have I've had this here the whole time. Look at how much I've drank. That was how I got. That was my #1 podcast, by the way, interviewing Julian Hearn, founder of Huel, and that's just randomly here. Excuse me, guys. So what they did, the 6 different ones, and they looked at the data, which was the most popular with our audience. Because to start with, you're sharing your podcast with your existing audience. Yes, you can then connect with and build a new audience, but to start with, you want to be sharing it with your audience. So you want to find out what they want to hear about the most. And they did one, for example, on the brand, so how they built the brand, so kind of entrepreneurship business. They did another one with Alfie Days, who's like 16 million YouTube followers. They did one on fitness influencers, because they had ambassadors, the likes of James Haskell, who I've had on my show as well, former England rugby player, and was on Celebrity. Then they did an episode where Alan, the founder, did a free mentoring session with a couple who had a business. And we found out, before I even knew the data, when I went up there to work with them as a consultant, that was my favorite episode. I thought just the energy levels of Alan interviewing them picked up. And funnily enough, when we looked at the data, that was the most popular episode. So I would like to see them do more of those kinds of episodes. And for you, I would say, starting as a series as well is easier with regards to time commitments. You're not committing to a weekly show as well. You can just spend more time promoting it, and then you can make the decision whether you then want to go all in on a weekly show, or like, say, Jonathan Bowman Perks did, and like I've done myself, now double down on it and do 2 episodes a week. You could do like Lewis Howes, was 3 episodes a week. So that would be my advice, but go with your gut. What's your gut instinct? Is it to go with a series, or is it to go all in on a weekly episode? My advice would just be to look at how much time you've got, how much time you can dedicate to it, because what I wouldn't want to see you do is launch a twice weekly show where you just put yourself under the cosh and you don't have the time to dedicate to promoting it. So for me, the hard work, it's like anything in life. If it was easy to get a #1 podcast and to become an influencer in your space, become an authority or a perceived one, and I'd like to think I've got a certain amount of knowledge in the podcasting space now, which is what I'm teaching you guys today. To be able to do that, I didn't go all in from day one, but I soon realized what an amazing platform this was, and how I could scale it by spending more time, but by then leveraging people around me, by getting somebody who could produce better than me, someone who could do better artwork than I could do. You could book guests more consistently than I did. Think about that. Georgina, I'm afraid I need to leave the webinar. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Yeah, this is just extra bit of Q&A, Georgina. I've got to go as well now, guys. Just realised the time. But hopefully, Sheridan, that gives you a few pointers. With anything in life, I always say go with your gut. That's just me. But you could choose to do that. You could choose to do that and just look at the data then and see what do people want to hear about the most. Is it careers? Is it tech? Is it entrepreneurship? And yeah, curiosity. I think people need to be more curious. They need to ask better, bigger questions, and you get bigger and better answers. So I think that's a great subject to start with. Do some research. Who else is in that space? What kind of category would you be looking to initially land in? For me, for all of you who are still on here, I can see we've still got about a third of the audience, would be think about the way they do it. You can pick 3 categories. It's massively weighted that the number one category you choose has the biggest weighting. And yes, at different times, we've had top rated podcasts in all 3 categories simultaneously. But more often than not, you will just get found for your top category. So think carefully on that. And look, it's not a life or death decision. You can change that. And you can literally change it in a day. And, I did it. We were top 50 for entrepreneurship. I thought, let's have a little play around. Jonathan Bowen-Perks is doing really well in the management section. Let's see how we would do in the management section. So I flipped it. And within, and you just do that on a hosting platform. Within, 12 hours, we were top 20 show in management. So you can play around with it for sure. Any other questions, guys? Post them up. As I say, do connect with me. Even if you're not starting a podcast now, the Facebook group is a great place to start. If you're ready to go now, give me a shout. Like I said, I've got 3 different options after the free option that you can get involved, that you can get access to me and my experience, what I've learned over the years, be that through the course, the mentorship, and the done for you version if you are brand. So I'm just going to have a quick look back and see if there's any last questions that I missed, because I think there was one. I'm going to give you this one because this is going to be on the replay then. People will be able to see afterwards, and it was about optimizing your setup, the audio. I can't remember. I'm just scrolling back to see who asked that one. So I can't find it right now, but look, I'm going to tell you how to do it. So this is the advice we've been giving our clients, and this is how you can improve the quality. So at the moment, barriers to entry are really, really low. You can literally Zoom somebody, set it up so that it automatically records it, so you don't have to worry about it screwing up. You literally, press call, they join the meeting, automatically recording as soon as they join it, or as soon as you start the meeting, it's already recording. Okay, and you move up from the free option to, I think it's $11.99 a month. That's it, peanuts in the great scheme of things, to get the recording gigabytes on there. So you would literally interview them on Zoom, and you end up with an audio file from Zoom. Is that the greatest quality to then put out as a professional quality podcast? No, it's not. And before this happened, like I said, I was meeting up with people in person using my high-end equipment. And will I go back to that? Interestingly, I might not. I might go back to what I did for the first 2 years and do 99% of my interviews online again, because it's just saves so much time. The biggest block I find when I'm working with people is that you get the CEO or the founder or whoever wants to be the host of the podcast saying, and quite often it's the marketing department saying, we want our CEO or founder to host the podcast, to position them as a thought leader, a person of influence, and they're like going, I haven't got the time to do this. I'm the entrepreneur. I'm super busy. And I get it. I said, what I say is, look, if you batch this, you know, how busy are you on a Friday after 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Could you allocate 2 to 3 hours to close off the week and do your interviews then? Or maybe you do it, you know, after lunch, or you do it Friday morning. But you know, pick a day where, you know, what are you doing that's super productive? For me, Friday afternoon, I've sacked off now since we've got this good weather. I'm playing golf from 3 o'clock on Fridays because I love it. It clears my mind. I have some of my best creative ideas on the golf course, and why I didn't do it sooner, I don't know. But that's one of the lessons from lockdown. So for me, that is a great time that you could be contacting people to interview them for your podcast, and do it in one hit. Record 4 interviews in like 3 hours. Done. How can you improve the audio? Okay, a couple of tips. You could have a microphone, okay? You plug it into your laptop, and that automatically will improve the audio content because you're not using the mic on your computer that picks up every noise known to man or beast that is in the room where you're at, okay? You could then get your guests to do exactly the same. And we've been sending our clients who have some of them, you know, quite high-end guests to get them to purchase a microphone as well. You can get a really good entry-level microphone. I've got a PDF actually. I forgot to mention this. I should have done this before. And now we've only got 30% of people on the webinar. But I've got a free PDF that I put together, like 2 pages of the best equipment, whether it's free, entry-level, and high-end. If you want access to that, just email me, alex@screwitjustdoit.org, and I'll send you the PDF. And it's got links where you can buy everything. So for me, you can get something called literally entry level. You can go £50, or you can go £100 for like good entry level mic, and you can do the same for your guest. I know somebody who even sends every guest the same mic and then and puts it in a returnable with a postage paid, so they just send it straight back, which is quite a nice idea to keep the costs low. Likewise, headphones. You don't need the greatest headphones in the world, but you just need your headphones plugged into the socket. I haven't got that today. I'm not recording this to put out as a podcast, but again, it takes out all the background noise. And ideally, yes, you can get your guest to wear a set of headphones. You can get a good set of headphones again for about £50 to do that. I know you can now get, a friend showed me today, £250 Apple AirPods with noise cancelling. They're meant to be pretty damn good if you want to go high end. Another further step on from that, and we're getting a little bit more technical with regards to this, but I'm going to leave it on here, and then whoever wants this knowledge, you've got it, is that you then record your voice and their voice separately using different equipment. So you've got the Zoom recording, yeah? You can then use free software that's on your laptop. It could be GarageBand, it could be Audacity. I pay for something called Adobe Audition. It's one of the Adobe products, Audition. I think it's £15, £20 a month. I pay for that. And I literally just hit click the audio file, name it, click the red button that says record, and I then got a recording of my own voice. We then get our interviewee to record their own voice on their software as well. My producer then takes both recordings and matches them up with the Zoom recording. So that is how you improve the recording. What you also want to do, which I forgot to mention, which I always forget, and my producer James kills me, is that when you record it on Zoom, there's a little button that you can tick that records, that splits the tracks. And what splitting the tracks means is that it records my voice separately and my guest's voice separately. And that's when you can then match them up afterwards, rather than, you know, if you're putting out a quote from an episode and I'm asking somebody a question, the guest a question, and they're giving me the answer, and I'm going, wow, no way, that's amazing. It doesn't sound that great. Whereas if you've just got them saying the story, it's recorded it as a split track. It's recorded their voices separately. So I will finish up on that. I know I've gone way over, so if you've stayed around, that's fine. Like I said, I was happy to hang out and answer any questions you've got. I hope that's been of value, guys. I'm just going to go back and look at the poll, and I'm going to take a little screenshot from my own research to see what you answered. So let's have a look. So 40% of you wanted to sell your products and services. 35% wanted to become a thought leader. So pretty even split, I would say, as 25% wanted to attract a new audience. I also think they're interlinked. I do get that. You could become a thought leader in your space by attracting a new audience and then selling them your products and services. So I get it. They do intertwine. And how would you best describe yourself? So 50% business owners, 30% entrepreneurs, 15% marketing professionals. So interesting. What I kind of expected with regards to the audience. Last time we had more marketing professionals. So very interesting. So thank you. Really appreciate you taking an hour and a half or more out of your busy days. I don't know about you. I've literally gone from having lots of time, i.e. setting up the Facebook group, the Podpreneur, to invest in there, to now being literally flat out with people who are becoming unfurloughed. And a lot of people I speak to, the decision makers are the marketing departments, to now getting a lot of inquiries from different brands who want to leverage the power of podcasting, want my help to create their own podcast, be that they want us to do all of the work, or they want to outsource the editing and production, or they just want me as a consultant to talk launch strategies and growing their community via the audio channel. So interesting times. Screenshot that, how you can connect with me, guys. And yeah, thank you once again. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go now. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to be doing this again, I think, next Wednesday. If you've missed it, you registered, you missed this, you can either watch the replay or you can jump on live next week. Jenna, thank you, Jenna. First time I've seen your name up there. Look forward to being part of Podpreneurs. Awesome. Hopefully we've got a bunch more Podpreneurs coming into the group today. Jenna, Georgina, Rufus, Sheridan, Joyce, HM, Jordan, Kathy, Roger, Dale, Miss, Sharon, Catherine, Justin. Sorry if I missed you out. Farah. So thank you everybody who was interactive, joined in with the polls, and posted up on here. Thank you as well. I genuinely appreciate it. Sharon, thank you as well. Really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully we'll be doing this live soon, guys. Thank you, Roger. Back in a live setting where we can actually interact and connect with humans again, because even though I'm getting your messages, don't get the same energy as when you're with a live audience doing a workshop or a masterclass. So awesome. Thank you for your time. Massively appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a successful end to your week.